You ever notice how the loudest people in the room are usually the most afraid? Have they thought they had you figured out? Labeled you, measured you, put you in a neat little psychological box with a fragile little bow on top, they whispered. Why know how to trigger them? We know how to break them. We know how to control the narrative. But here's the punchline. You didn't react. You didn't explode. You didn't defend. You didn't beg. You didn't chase. You reversed it. While they were playing checkers with your emotions, you were redesigning the entire board. They expected chaos. You gave them silence. They expected weakness. You gave them discipline. They expected you to crumble under pressure. But pressure, that just carved you into something sharper. And now? Now they're looking around the room, wondering when the script flipped. When the target became the strategist. When the puppet slipped the strings and started pulling them instead. You didn't just survive the manipulation. You studied it. You absorbed it. You mastered it. You pulled off the greatest psychological reversal in history. Not by overpowering them, but by outgrowing the need to fight at all. And that's what's shaking them. Because the most terrifying thing in the world isn't a loud enemy. It's a calm mind that understands the game better than the players. Let's begin. Silence is the move they never prepare for. People spend their entire lives rehearsing arguments in their heads. They imagine your reaction. They script your anger. They predict your tears. They count on your defense. Noise is predictable. Emotion is predictable. Outrage is predictable. But silence is a psychological blackout. It forces them to sit alone with their own projection. When you stop explaining yourself, something unsettling happens. The narrative they built around you begins to collapse. They were ready to debate. They were ready to accuse. They were ready to provoke. And when nothing comes back, their energy has nowhere to land. It echoes. It exposes them. The silence becomes a mirror, and most people are not comfortable staring into their own reflection. Silence is not weakness. It is restraint sharpened into strategy. Anyone can shout. Anyone can react. Reaction is instinct. Silence is discipline. It means you are no longer operating from impulse. You are observing. You are calculating. You are choosing not to feed the fire. Because you understand something they don't. A fire without oxygen dies on its own. When you withhold your response, you reclaim control of the emotional tempo. Conversations are like dances. The one who reacts is being led. The one who pauses controls the rhythm. A well-timed silence stretches seconds into discomfort. It forces the other person to fill the void. And in their rush to fill it, they reveal more than they intended. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. They expose insecurity. Silence disrupts manipulation because manipulation depends on predictable triggers. Push this button, get that reaction. Say this insult, provoke that defense. But when the button stops working, confusion sets in. The manipulator begins to question their leverage. They lose certainty. They lose dominance. They lose the illusion of control. There is also power in what silence communicates without a single word. It says, I don't need your validation. It says, your opinion does not dictate my emotional state. It says, I am not threatened. And that unspoken message travels deeper than any argument ever could. Words can be challenged. Tone can be misinterpreted. Silence stands unshaken. Most people fear silence because it feels like surrender. In reality, it is selective engagement. It is understanding that not every battle deserves your voice. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is refusing to participate in the game at all. Silence also protects your clarity. The moment you react emotionally, your focus narrows. You become consumed with proving, defending, correcting. Silence keeps your perspective wide. You see patterns. You recognize tactics. You detach from the emotional bait and analyze the structure of the exchange. That distance transforms you from participant to strategist. Over time, your silence builds a reputation. People learn that provoking you does not yield entertainment. Gossip does not earn attention. Drama does not secure engagement. And when drama starves, it searches for easier targets. Your quiet composure becomes a boundary more powerful than any verbal warning. Silence is not absence. It is presence without noise. It is confidence without display. It is power that does not need to announce itself. And in a world addicted to reaction, the person who chooses stillness becomes unpredictable. Unpredictability unsettles people. It makes them question their assumptions. It makes them second-guess their tactics. The ultimate power of silence lies in its ability to shift perception. The one who stays calm appears composed. The one who keeps talking appears desperate. The one who refrains from defending appears secure. The one who keeps attacking appears unstable. Without lifting a finger, the entire psychological dynamic reverses. Silence transforms you from target to observer, from reactor to controller, from emotional participant to psychological architect. Emotional control is the moment the game stops being about survival and starts being about strategy. Most people operate on impulse. They feel, and then they act. They're insulted, so they snap. They're ignored, so they chase. They're challenged, so they defend. It's automatic, predictable, and predictability is leverage. The person who can map your emotions can steer your behavior. The reversal begins when you feel the trigger and do nothing with it. That pause, that microscopic space between stimulus and response, is where power lies. It's uncomfortable. Your ego wants to speak. Your pride wants to react. Your insecurity wants reassurance. But when you hold steady, when you breathe instead of explode, you break the chain. You prove that your emotions are signals, not commands. People expect access to your emotional buttons. They believe that if they push hard enough, you'll show them exactly what they want to see. Anger validates their provocation. Sadness validates their dominance. Defensiveness validates their accusation. But composure invalidates their entire strategy. Emotional control does not mean you don't feel. It means you don't broadcast every feeling like a breaking news alert. It means you understand that not every emotion deserves an audience. When you stop offering emotional reactions on demand, the dynamic shifts. They are no longer influencing your state. You are choosing it. And that choice is disruptive. Because once you demonstrate that your mood is self-governed, manipulation loses traction. Guilt stops working. Intimidation loses weight. Passive aggression falls flat. You become psychologically slippery. Hard to hook, hard to provoke, hard to destabilize. There's also a deeper shift that happens internally. When you master your reactions, you begin to see situations with clarity instead of distortion. Emotion narrows perception. Anger exaggerates threats. Fear magnifies risk. Jealousy invents narratives. But control widens your lens. You see the bigger picture. You recognize patterns. You understand motives without being consumed by them. Calmness unsettles people who rely on chaos. They interpret your steadiness as indifference or superiority because they can't access it themselves. They escalate, hoping to crack the surface. But the more they escalate and the more you remain centered, the clearer the contrast becomes. One person is governed by impulse. The other is governed by intention. That contrast shifts authority in subtle ways. In arguments, the calm voice is perceived as credible. In conflict, the composed posture signals strength. In tense situations, the one who does not panic becomes the anchor. Emotional stability is contagious. It influences the entire atmosphere. And when you carry it consistently, you begin to dictate the tone of interactions without ever raising your voice. Control also protects your long, short-term position. Emotional reactions can feel satisfying in the moment, but they often create consequences that linger. A sharp reply, a public outburst, a reckless message sent in anger. Those are moves you can't retract. When you regulate your state, you give yourself the advantage of foresight. You respond in ways that align with your long-term goals rather than your short-term impulses. Over time, this discipline builds an aura of unpredictability. Not because you are chaotic, but because you are not reactive. People cannot anticipate your emotional collapse because it doesn't exist. They cannot bait you into self-sabotage because you see the bait before it lands. That awareness creates a psychological edge. Emotional control flips the script because it changes the power source. Instead of others influencing how you feel, you decide how you operate. Instead of being dragged into storms, you observe them from higher ground. Instead of reacting to every spark, you determine which fires are worth your energy. When you own your emotions, you own the outcome. Detachment is misunderstood because people confuse it with apathy. They think stepping back means you don't care. In reality, detachment is caring without surrendering control. It is the ability to observe what is happening without allowing it to hijack your identity, your mood, or your direction. When you detach, you don't abandon the situation. You remove yourself from being emotionally owned by it. Manipulation thrives on attachment. The need to be understood, the need to be validated, the need to win, the need to keep someone. Those needs are the hooks. If someone knows you crave approval, they can withhold it. If someone knows you fear loss, they can threaten it. If someone knows you want recognition, they can dangle it just out of reach. Attachment creates leverage. Detachment removes it. When you detach, the first thing that changes is your urgency. You stop rushing to correct every false assumption. You stop scrambling to defend every criticism. You stop trying to control how others perceive you. That calm distance creates psychological friction for anyone trying to pull your strings. They expect pursuit. They expect pleading. They expect reaction. Instead, they encounter stillness. That stillness is destabilizing. A manipulator measures success by visible impact. If they provoke you and you remain grounded, they lose feedback. If they attempt to guilt you, and you don't internalize it, their tactic evaporates. Without emotional feedback, their strategy feels ineffective. They begin to question themselves. They lose confidence in their influence. Detachment also sharpens perception. When you are emotionally entangled, your judgment bends. You justify red flags, you ignore patterns. You excuse behavior that contradicts your values because your attachment clouds clarity. Distance clears the lens. You start seeing motives instead of words. You recognize cycles instead of isolated incidents. You understand that not every apology equals change, and not every promise equals commitment. There is power in no longer needing a specific outcome. When you are attached to one result, you become vulnerable to pressure. But when you can say internally, if this works, fine. If it doesn't, I'll still be whole. Your posture shifts. You negotiate from strength. You walk away when necessary. You refuse to accept crumbs when you know your worth is not negotiable. Detachment does not eliminate emotion. It regulates investment. You can care about someone without allowing their behavior to define your peace. You can desire success without tying your identity to a single opportunity. You can experience disappointment without collapsing into it. This balanced engagement makes you difficult to destabilize. People sense when they no longer have emotional control over you. It unsettles them because it changes the hierarchy. They may escalate tactics, becoming sweeter, harsher, louder, colder, searching for the old version of you who reacted predictably. But when you maintain distance, the dynamic transforms. You are no longer orbiting their mood. They begin orbiting your indifference. Detachment also preserves energy. Emotional entanglement drains attention and focus. You replay conversations. You analyze tone. You interpret silence. You lose hours to internal arguments that never needed to exist. When you detach, you reclaim that mental space. Your focus returns to growth, strategy, and self-respect. At its core, detachment is freedom from dependency. It is understanding that your stability does not hinge on someone else's consistency. It is realizing that your value is not up for debate. It is choosing to participate in relationships and situations from a place of strength rather than fear. And when manipulation meets someone who is no longer emotionally dependent on the outcome, it has nothing to grip. Strategic patience is not passive waiting, it is controlled timing. Most people move the moment they feel discomfort. They rush to respond, rush to fix, rush to retaliate. Urgency feels powerful because it gives the illusion of action. But urgency without direction exposes intention. When you move too quickly, you reveal your fears, your desires, your insecurities. Patience conceals them. When you practice strategic patience, you allow situations to unfold before you intervene. You gather information while others expose themselves. In moments of tension, people who lack patience overplay their hand. They talk too much. They react too strongly. They commit too early. And in doing so, they reveal their strategy. Your stillness becomes a spotlight that makes their impatience visible. Waiting is uncomfortable because it forces you to sit with uncertainty. The mind craves resolution. It wants answers, closure, movement. But patience understands that timing can be more powerful than force. A delayed response carries more weight than an instant reaction. A well-timed move can dismantle what reckless action would only escalate. Strategic patience also disrupts expectations. When someone anticipates immediate feedback and you withhold it, their confidence wavers. They begin to question their approach. They replay the interaction in their mind, trying to decode your silence. The longer you maintain composure, the more space they fill with their own assumptions. In that space, doubt grows. There is a psychological advantage in letting others underestimate you. Impatient individuals often mistake patience for weakness. They assume your delay means hesitation or fear. That assumption makes them careless. They reveal their full intensity too soon. They commit resources, emotion, and energy without realizing you are observing patterns and mapping outcomes. Patience gives you perspective. Time exposes consistency or inconsistency. It reveals whether someone's behavior is a momentary lapse or a repeated pattern. Acting too quickly can trap you in cycles that could have been avoided with observation. By allowing time to clarify intention, you make decisions from evidence rather than emotion. In conflict, strategic patience lowers the temperature. When someone approaches you with aggression and you refuse to mirror it, the dynamic shifts. Their momentum weakens because it meets no resistance. If you respond immediately with equal force, the situation escalates. If you pause, you regain control of the tempo. You decide when and how the next move occurs. Patience is also about conserving energy. Not every opportunity requires immediate pursuit. Not every criticism demands instant correction. Not every challenge needs to be confronted at its peak intensity. Sometimes the most effective strategy is allowing the situation to exhaust itself. Many conflicts collapse under their own weight when not constantly fueled. Over time, your consistency in waiting before acting builds a reputation. People learn that you do not move from impulse. They recognize that your decisions are deliberate. This awareness alone creates pressure. When others know you are calculating rather than reacting, they approach you with more caution. Your unpredictability lies not in chaos, but in measured restraint. Strategic patience transforms time into an ally. Instead of feeling rushed by circumstances, you use them to your advantage. You let impatience reveal weaknesses. You let silence create tension. You let observation sharpen insight. And when you finally move, it is not out of desperation but precision. The power of patience lies in its quiet dominance. While others sprint toward immediate gratification, you build leverage. While others scramble to control outcomes, you control timing. And in the space created by waiting, the entire psychological balance begins to tilt in your favor. A calm mind creates a different kind of disturbance. Not the loud, chaotic kind that draws attention with noise, but the quiet disruption that unsettles people at their core. When you remain composed in situations designed to provoke you, you interrupt expectations. Most confrontations rely on emotional reciprocity. Anger expects anger. Panic expects panic. Pressure expects visible strain. When none of that appears, the dynamic fractures. Chaos feeds on reaction. It needs visible impact to sustain itself. When someone attempts to destabilize you and you stay centered, they lose the confirmation they were seeking. Their words feel less powerful. Their tactics feel less effective. And without emotional feedback, they begin to question whether they miscalculated. That doubt is the beginning of psychological reversal. A calm mind processes differently. Instead of absorbing tension, it analyzes it. Instead of personalizing hostility, it examines motive. This creates a stark contrast between you and the person attempting to provoke you. While they escalate, you observe. While they intensify, you simplify. The contrast alone can feel threatening to someone who depends on emotional dominance. Composure under pressure suggests depth. It signals that you are not operating on surface impulses. People instinctively measure strength by stability. If your voice remains steady, your posture relaxed, your responses measured, it communicates that the situation does not control you. That message alone can disarm aggression more effectively than confrontation. There is also unpredictability in calmness. Emotional individuals follow patterns. Trigger them, and you know what happens next. But a calm mind is harder to read. It does not reveal its next move through visible agitation. It does not telegraph insecurity through tone. This unpredictability creates unease. When people cannot anticipate your reaction, they lose strategic confidence. Calmness also reframes perception. In any tense exchange, observers subconsciously assign credibility to the more composed individual. The person who appears grounded seems rational. The one who appears reactive seems unstable. Without raising your voice or asserting dominance, your steadiness shifts the narrative in your favor. Internally, a calm mind preserves clarity. Stress narrows thinking. It reduces options to fight or flight, but composure keeps cognitive space open. You consider alternatives. You recognize leverage points. You see long-term implications instead of short-term victories. This broader awareness enables decisions that are precise rather than impulsive. When someone attempts to create chaos around you and fails, the failure itself becomes destabilizing. They may increase intensity, searching for cracks, but the more they push and the less you bend, the more the imbalance becomes visible. Their agitation contrasts with your stillness. Their urgency clashes with your control. That imbalance exposes who truly holds emotional authority. Calmness is not suppression. It is regulation. You acknowledge tension without surrendering to it. You feel pressure without broadcasting it. This internal discipline builds resilience over time. Each moment you choose steadiness reinforces the habit. Eventually, composure becomes your default rather than your effort. In environments filled with noise and reaction, a calm presence stands out. It alters the atmosphere. Conversations slow down. Aggression softens. Even silence gains weight. People adjust their tone in response to your stability. Without demanding control, you influence it. The real disruption of a calm mind lies in its refusal to participate in unnecessary turbulence. It refuses to amplify drama. It refuses to mirror instability. It refuses to trade long-term positioning for short-term emotional release. And in doing so, it shifts the entire psychological landscape without ever appearing to try.